Hi, kids! Are you ready for Chapter 3 of Miss Osborne the Mop? I'm ready. All right, let's see if Jody is still magic. Are you ready? Now, the thing to do, exclaimed Dill, is to find out just what you can do and what you can't. Then we'll make a list of things we want and we'll go around the house and collect. We, said Jody calmly. I'm the one who can do this, Dill Tracy, and I don't want to make out any list. Ah, Jody, don't be a crumb, cried Dill. I wouldn't leave you out of it if it was me and I could do it. What are you, a pig or something? Jody relented. She felt sure Dill wouldn't leave her out. He might make her life miserable by teasing and tormenting, but he wouldn't leave her out of anything. Oh, all right, she said at last. I wasn't going to leave you out anyway. It wouldn't be much fun by myself, I guess. But Dill, listen. If I get you all those things you want, you have to promise to quit being mean. Sure, I promise, said Dill amiably, without having the least idea what she was talking about. You have to stop pulling my hair and calling me Google Eyes, Jody went on relentlessly. And don't splash me when we go swimming or push me in when I'm standing on the side, and don't hide in the hall and jump out at me. Oh, rats, Jody, cried Dill. That isn't being mean. That's just being friendly. Well, I think it's being mean, Jody answered, and you have to stop. Okay, agreed Dill. I'll try anyway. He picked up a rock and held it out to her. Now change this into something. Jody hesitated. No, she said finally. I made you into a squirrel and I made a cake for you. Now I'm going to do something for me. You never know when this might wear off or something. Gee, do you think so, asked Dill? What a disappointment. Well, it just might, she answered. Now hush. She picked up a leaf and looked hard at it. Because of changing the saucer into the bowl of goldfish, she knew it was easy enough to do this. All she had to do was picture what she wanted in her mind, and as soon as she said the words, why, there it was. But there wasn't any point in letting Dill know this. He might as well be impressed with how hard it was. So she screwed up her face and held her breath and squirmed around and tried to look as though she was exerting a tremendous amount of effort. Be a chocolate sundae, she said at last. And in her hand, instead of a leaf's faintly scratchy touch, was the weight of something cold and hard. A glass dish heaped with ice cream with shiny brown chocolate sauce sliding down the white slopes. On the very top was a cherry, and a spoon stuck out from the side of the dish. It looked simply wonderful. Gosh, is that all you could do? Asked Dill scornfully. I thought you were going to end up with a roast turkey. It's what I wanted, said Jody, eyeing it hungrily. Is things to eat all you can manage? Dill wanted to know. I turned you into a squirrel, Jody retorted indignantly. Lots of people eat squirrels, Jill told her. I bet things to eat is all you can do. No, it isn't, protested Jody. Well, prove it, Dill said, holding out his rock again. No, wait. Let's eat the sundae first before it melts. He reached for the spoon, but Jody suddenly grabbed his arm. No, don't, she cried. Why, for Pete's sake? Why not? He asked. Oh, I just thought that leaf might have been poisonous, Jody exclaimed. You know how after you ate the cake, you said you felt like you'd eaten a magazine? If you ate the sundae, you might feel like you'd just eaten a poisonous leaf. He gave her an admiring look. Gee, Jody, you're positively dangerous, he said. Well, next time we have applesauce or Jell-O for dessert, you can turn it into a sundae. Now do this rock. What'll I change it into, she asked. Dill pondered. A magnifying glass, he said at last. A big one. Jody concentrated. Be a magnifying glass, she said to the rock, and there it was, a fine big glass with a metal rim and a black handle. Neat, cried Dill. Gee, thanks, Jody. Hey, looky at this ant. He looks big as a dog. They spent some time peering at ants and leaves and inside of half of a robin's egg they found under a tree, some moss and a rhododendron blossom. Dill showed Jody how the glass would gather and converge the rays of the sun and make the damp leaves crisp and curl and smoke. Don't leave it smoldering, warned Jody. That's the way forest fires start. Do you think I'm dumb or something? Asked Dill, grinding the leaves under his foot. I've spent enough summers up here to know about fires and being careful. Anyway, we don't have to worry this time of year. The woods are still dripping from all that rain last month. But to show Jody he knew about such things, he buried the leaves under a handful of earth. They were still looking at a grasshopper's leg when Aunt Margaret called them to lunch. Ah, heck, said Dill. I planned on having a motorbike and a hunting knife and a record player by lunchtime. I bet Mother will want me to go into Wolftown with her this afternoon. I bet we never get a chance to do anything good. Come on back out here as soon as you can, will you, Jody? He was right. Aunt Margaret did want him to go into Wolftown with her. As a matter of fact, Jody went too to help with the week's grocery shopping and some other errands. So it was after supper before she and Dill managed any privacy. In Dill's room, they sat side by side on the edge of Dill's bottom bed bunk. They had to sit on the very edge because of all the things on it, all the things Dill meant to put away sometime, like his chess set and the pair of blue jeans that were only a little muddy and could probably be worn again if his mother didn't look at him too closely, and the things that he couldn't make up his mind what to do with, like a gourd dipper with a leak in it, and a rock that might have fossils in it, and 3 or 4 comic books that he had read once but might want to read again, and things that he didn't exactly have a place for, like his tennis racket and a coconut that his grandmother had sent him from Florida, and the insides of an electric clock. He slept on the top bunk, so there were only a few books and a baseball bat up there. Can you still do it? He asked Jody as soon as they had managed to squeeze in among these things. I guess so, she answered. She picked up a comic book and held it out in front of her. Be careful, cried Dill. Don't waste yourself. You might run down like a battery. Turn it into something we really want, like a motorbike. What are you going to tell your mother when a motorbike turns up in your bedroom? Jody wanted to know. Gee, that's right, he said. He scratched his head. I couldn't say I found it, could I? He thought a minute. We'll just have to think of some good explanation before we do it. Say, how about money? Can you turn that comic book into money so I could buy a motorbike? Aunt Margaret's big yellow cat, Tamsin, jumped up on Jody's lap and began to push his head against her arm and purr loudly. Jody concentrated on the comic book. Be a $5 bill, she said slowly. The bill was new and crisp. Jody turned it over and over. It looked all right. But somehow she was uneasy. As she well knew, money and magic didn't mix. People who wished for wealth always ended up with pudding stuck in their noses or even worse, misfortunes. And Dill might call it science, but she still thought it was magic. Here, said Dill, thrusting the rest of the comic books into her lap, where Tamsin promptly lay down on them. And don't bother with $5 bills. 20s or 100s will do just fine. Jody stroked Tamsin, who rolled over on his back and purred in a loud, high giggle. No, she said finally. I don't think I'd better. It wouldn't be honest somehow, and besides, Dill, it isn't going to be a bit easier to explain how you got $300 or $400 than it would be to explain how you got a motorbike. Sure it would, cried Dill. I could say I was out in the woods and stopped a runaway horse with a little girl on it and saved her life, and her father was a millionaire and gave me the money for a reward. Well, you could say that, said Jody scornfully. But it would be a big fat lie, and it certainly sounds like one. I can just hear what Aunt Margaret and Uncle John would say. Maybe we could find the money somewhere, Dill went on. We could be digging a hole down by the creek and find a chest full of money left by pirates, or maybe some bank robbers. I guess there wouldn't be any pirates up here in the mountains, though. If bank robbers left it, it would have to go back to the bank, Jody pointed out. Anyway, Daddy told me if you dig up something like that, money or treasure or anything, you had to give it to the government if you couldn't find the rightful owner. Dill looked despairing. I guess you'll have to stick with things to eat, he said gloomily. That way we can destroy the evidence. They'll find out about anything else. Working miracles did have its problems that Jody hadn't considered. Of course, we could go way out in the woods and I could turn a stick into a motorcycle for you and you could ride it out there, said Jody slowly. Dill, who was always one to consider half a loaf better than none, brightened considerably. Yeah, he cried. And when I got through riding it, you could turn it back into a stick. And we wouldn't even have to try to hide it. That wouldn't be as much fun as riding it where everybody could see it. He'd counted on taking it home with him and showing it off a little. He'd be the only boy in his grade who had a motorbike. He'd sort of planned on riding it to school, but this was better than nothing. We can do that tomorrow, Jody thought. But I wish there was something we could do now. She wondered if chocolate fudge made out of a comic book would be as fattening as chocolate fudge made out of sugar and butter and cocoa. She pushed Tamsin off her lap and picked up one of the comic books. But she supposed it would be fattening, and anyway, she'd just finished supper, so she wasn't really hungry. Tamsin rubbed against her ankles and looked up to see what had made her shove him off of his comfortable place. What beautiful eyes he had, greenish with gold fires in them, like a tiger's. Be a tiger, Tamsin, said Jody, almost without thinking. Jody didn't know how Dill managed to get up on the top bunk bed so fast, but she knew he was there because when she drew back from Tamsin, her head hit the bulge where his weight made the mattress sag. She was too terrified to say anything, however. She just squeezed slowly back between the coconut and the gourd dripper and stared fascinated at Tamsin. Tamsin made a magnificent tiger. Under his thick, striped coat, his muscles ebbed and flowed. His tiny eyes glowed in his flat, broad head, and his huge white fangs showed when he lifted his black lip. Except for the tiger's rasping purr, there was silence in Dill's room. Jody opened her mouth to say, "Be Tamsin," but nothing came out but a tiny, tiny squeak. And anyway, she had forgotten what Tamsin looked like. The tiger filled her mind as he seemed to fill the room with flashing gold and black and the gleam of slashing teeth. "Margaret," shouted Uncle John, "have you seen that quarter that I left out on the side porch?" The tiger turned its wide head toward the door. His green eyes slitted into two dark crescents. "Turn him back, Jody," whispered Dill frantically. "Turn him back." Tamsin uttered a loud purr and stretched his neck, trying to see Dill. Then he stood up and put his huge front paws on the top bunk. Jody could see his creamy underside and the way his long, lovely tail wound between his legs. His fur brushed her knees. The bulge in the mattress moved swiftly toward the wall. Uncle John's footsteps sounded in the hall. "Margaret," he called, "are you up there?" "For Pete's sake, Jody!" Dill's low voice was agonized. "What's the matter with you? He's going to eat me." Jody swallowed hard. She was trying for all she was worth, but somehow she couldn't make her jaws move. She couldn't say the words. Her whole work seemed paralyzed. And she told Dill later she was so scared she could hardly breathe. "Margaret," said Uncle John right outside the door. "Jody!" squeaked Dill. "Purr, said the tiger. Oh, no. See you tomorrow.